Hello there race fans and welcome back to the 2024 URL Karting Championship. You join us for round 5 at Wakefield Karting. So this is a new track for all the drivers, and an indoor one, a nice tight, twisty, lots of hairpins sort of circuit, so we'll see who fares well here. So firstly, my apologies due to user error pressing the incorrect button on the camera. We don't have footage from the quali or the first race sessions that ran back to back. We've just got a single photo of my feet, which is not ideal. We did manage to sort that ready for race 2, which saw plenty of action anyway, so there's still a good video and a good bit of karting action to see. So first up, we'll just review the championship standings coming into this round. So McLaughlin had a really solid round, as did Davidson. In round 3 at Blighton, really closing that gap up on myself up at the top. Just 5 points between myself and Dan, and then just a further 9 back to Tom. Ed also had a decent round. He's up in P4 after Horton and Glover were both absent from that one. They dropped to 5th and 6th respectively. Elliot had another good round there, really making the most of the good kart that he had. If you watched the last video, you saw a lot of his driving as we sat behind him for most of the race in that one. He jumped Jordan and Chef Hopkins in that last round, so those boys are now sat 8th and 9th, but that pack really tight in the middle. G Miller suffered again with his car, as did Chef just above him. Did close that gap a little bit, just 13 between those two now. Unfortunately, Housley and Jackson are both absent from this one, and it does work out at a triple header, so they could well suffer to Divine, who is sat in P13 at the minute, just 12 points behind Jackson. Paddy, Alex, Kurt and Louis down at the bottom, all absent once again, so they're not going to gain any ground here. So first up was quali. We were all set off straight from the pit lane, and you were given 10 minutes to go out there and set the quickest lap you could, simple as that. We ended up, myself and Horton, in a bit of a pack of cars ahead of us. We caught them up quite quickly and sat there for a good few laps. I made the decision with a couple of laps to go that I had to drop back to find some space because it was killing lap time. Rob didn't. I don't know if he got a bit caught up having a battle up there. But in the end, dropping back worked out for me, as it meant that I set the quickest lap time of 41.2, just 0.16 ahead of Glover, who started towards the front, so had some clear track quite quickly. So pretty pleased with that. Ed had a solid qualifying session, finding himself in P3, making the most of Horton and Davison being stuck in that traffic. Horton beating Davison by just 0.06 for P4 on the grid. Elliot gets the best of that midfield pack as he starts P6. He was just over a 10th down on the front runners, with Chef just another 10th further back. Disappointed though, will be second in the championship, Dan McLaughlin. He's way down in P8 for this one, although just 0.09 seconds behind the Chef. P8 on the grid will be a disappointing start for him. Divine makes his return, and he's P9, just ahead of Was, and Miller, unfortunately, was the slowest man in qualifying. So moving across to the championship standings then after the quali results, and I've managed to extend the lead up at the gap to 13 now after Dan's difficult start to the day. Davidson has closed in on him in P3 as well. Ed with a solid run in there, pulls away from Glover and Horton a little bit, but Glover does manage to draw level with his big rival Horton going into the first race, and Glover gets P2 on the grid, which is the inside line into turn 1 for race 1. Elliot jumps a little bit further ahead of Wash, and Chef closes that gap up behind, as well as extending it away from the rival Gaz, as G Miller ended up down in P11 in quali. Divine immediately gains a place, jumping Jackson, well, draws level with Jackson, so Jackson technically stays P12. And he closes to within 20 points of Housley. So can he make that jump as well and get into the top 11? We'll have to wait and see. Now, there was a little bit of drama in the race, so I got off to a really solid start, covered Glover off on the inside as part of this quick rundown. but then there's a small bump on the way into the final hairpin. You might pick it up when we get some actual footage from race 2. And the kart that I was in, about midway through the race, that bump must have had some kind of impact, because suddenly lost all power down the straights. So we'd made a massive gap, and Glover, Horton, Davison just absolutely ate through that gap as soon as this issue arose with the karts, to the point at which I was having to defend every corner. They were flying down the straights, and it was a bit of a shunt into turn 2 from Glover into the back of me that suddenly sprung the kart back to life. I wish I had the footage, because the engine noise was notable in how it changed after the impact, and suddenly we were flying again and we were away. And then at some point in amongst there, Glover and Horton got into a bit of a tangle, which allowed Davison through. And then towards the last couple of laps, I had the impact again on the little bump on the way into the final corner, and the kart lost power again. So Davison started closing up. Fortunately for myself, there wasn't enough laps left for him to be able to close that gap entirely. So he held on for the race win. Davison takes P2, getting past the squabbling Glover and Horton, as well as taking the fastest lap in there, Davison, on the way. Glover does stay just ahead of Horton in their little rivalry. Chef has jumped up a few places, he's up to P5. Ed, from starting P3, just didn't work out for him in the race, he drops off to P6. Divine gets past his big off-track rival in McLaughlin, who ends up P8, so he's lost another bunch of points from being just 5 points off the lead of the championship coming into this one. It's just not going his way today. Was holds on ahead of Miller, and then Blake was involved in a big incident early on in the race when all the pack were bunched up between himself and McLaughlin. I think that's probably what cost McLaughlin a place to Divine too, but Blake came out with an injury to his arm and had to stop and come off the track, so really unfortunate. We never want to see anyone get hurt out there, but yeah, he had to retire from the race unfortunately, so ends up finishing P11, gifting a place to the likes of Wass and Miller, who was in that big midfield battle against. So what does that mean for the standings? Well, there's no change up at the very summit, but Davison does jump McLaughlin by a single point. So big scenes there. McLaughlin's struggling out here with this circuit. We had a bit of time to debrief coming off the track in between this race and the second race. Also allowed us to reset the camera, fortunately. And Dan just said that it's just not his sort of circuit, an indoor circuit, lots of hairpins, just doesn't suit his driving style, and he's just really suffering out there. Glover got the better of Horton, jumps himself back above Cave, and Horton's performance draws him level with Cave. So those three separated by a single point going into this second race. The second race starts in the positions that the first race ended. So Cave will have to start that little bit further back than he did in the first race, and Davison will get P2 going from the line in the second one. Chef again had a decent run. He's drawn level with Wass in this one. Elliott obviously had to retire from the race, so ended up at the back of the pack, which has allowed Chef and Wass to catch up. The gap back to Miller's then extended to 22 points now, which the Chef will be happy about. But Gaz will be keen to try and eke those points back out and close that back up. Divine had a decent race, got the better of McLaughlin, but it wasn't quite enough for him to be able to jump past Housley. So he ends up just 6 points off him down there in P12, but he has cleared Jackson by 14 this time. Unfortunately, Divine was feeling ill and didn't manage to take place, didn't start in the second race, so unfortunately doesn't gain any points for the final race on this one. So Housley just survives by the skin of his teeth here, but he is going to lose more ground to those rival challengers just above him in that tight midfield pack. So here we go then, this is where the kart's all finished. So on the back of the issues we were having with the kart that I was in, I'd had a chat with the stewards and they gave me the chance. They said we could swap karts to a fresh one, but it'd be cold, might take some laps to warm up. So I've sort of weighed up the options and said, well, if we're restarting the karts, maybe this kart 18 will be okay, because when it's running, it's quick, it feels good, it feels quick. All the karts here did feel pretty even. There wasn't really big gaps down the straight until I'd seen that issue, which was really good. certainly a long way from what we'd seen at Brighton in the previous round. So we gambled on it, but you could already see a shake of the head on the run round to the grid. So obviously a little bit nervous that the kart doesn't feel great. We've got Davison starting on the inside just behind us, Horton's right behind him. Another big shake of the head. Not convinced that this kart's going to be okay. The last lad's just coming round there. Glover sneaking forward past his grid slot. He's always trying something, isn't he? He's like the Dick Dastardly of this racing series, is Glover. Always up to no good. There you go, he's getting some jip from Davison as well in P2. What a naughty, naughty man. Glover in the infamous orange helmet. He'll try anything to gain a little bit of an advantage, won't he? So here we go then, lined up on the grid. All the lads are there now. So we'll just wait for the steward to come back forward. And then the light is up there on the left-hand side. And it's lights out and away we go. Just immediately to the inside, covering off Davison. Immediately the kart feels sluggish. We know we're in trouble, already looking over the shoulder. Try and keep it tight, so it's really difficult to overtake at this point. Track barely a kart wide, coming through most of the corners here. But we can feel that Davison is all over us, and here you go. Here's the first half straight for him to have a go at, and he's immediately alongside us, so we're really, really struggling. And you'll see in this little set, look at that tiny straight there, and he's already pulling away. Really in the mire with this kart. If we stick with this, there's a strong chance we drop all the way to the back. Big shake of the head, really disappointed. Should have taken the other option and got a different kart. Now looking to the side. Glover comfortably passed, even Horton passed, so we're down to 2 places there, down to P4 in one straight on the pit straight. It's another shake of the head. Could sort of stick with people a little bit through this bit, but then look, as soon as it comes to acceleration, they're away again. Look at the difference between the karts. So it's an immediate dive into the pits. We don't want this kart anymore. There's nothing we can do with that. We can't fight anyone. We're just in trouble. A wave of the hand trying to get the attention of the steward. The other steward has seen us, but he's busy chatting, and we need some attention. It's Divine, I think he's talking to, distracting him. He's suddenly realised, points us to the kart we can jump into, which was Divine's kart from race 1. It gives us a few words of encouragement here. Lets us know that the kart is a quick kart, because he's just had to run it round after Divine decided he wasn't going to race. But we're on cold tyres, so here we go, and we're back away again, and then nearly into that barrier. Cold tyres nearly locked it up. There you could see Davison coming round. That's how close we are to being lapped. We've managed to stay just about on the lead lap. So here we go, we'll have a bomb now down to this corner, and we can already feel the difference between the karts. Now you don't see much for a little while, so we'll sit you into fast forward while we find some action. So here we go then, we rejoin the action as we come up on the back of the first set of karts. We've been slowly reeling them in. I don't know if you managed to see it in the sped up footage, but we've been slowly closing this gap lap after lap. So we've got G Miller in the blue suit, McLaughlin just ahead of him with Was, seemingly the blocker out on track here. The the cork in the bottle. Nobody can get through. See G Miller got himself a new helmet that finally arrived for this one. We think about moving to there, but it really tightens up into that corner. That could have been an accident waiting to happen. So here we go, we come round, we're following him round. If we can get a good exit, we can see the steward there has a blue flag in his hand. We're on the same lap as these lads. Shake of the head as he's offering out the blue flag. That shouldn't have been waved. This is for position. Shaking the head again, trying to tell him no, it's for position. We're looking forward to the battle, and these boys all let us through, which is nice of them. Unfortunately, there's no way of communicating with them when we're in the karts, and blue flag doesn't mean no overtaking. You can't let that opportunity slide. We've had a little bit of jip from it from some of the drivers that were involved that weren't particularly happy that we took advantage of that situation, but sitting behind them would have absolutely killed our race as well. As much as we're looking forward to battling our way through, it's a shame that the stewards have got that one wrong. But we speed back up again as we open the gap to them almost immediately behind. Wasp did hand a position back, he so claims, to McLaughlin in amongst all that, thinking that it was him I was shaking my head at, that I'd seen him make a pass. But blue flags don't mean don't pass. Blue flags mean let the lead lap through, let the faster karts through, sort of thing. So there's nothing in there that says don't overtake. So it was a perfectly legal overtake, as were all three of the overtakes that we made in there, even if they were made easier by the stewards. So we're on a run now, chasing and chasing. I think it's the chef that we're trying to close down at this point. He was having a decent race himself. You can just see him ahead on the sped up footage. Coming into turn one, we're on the back of the chef now. Those yellow flashes on his helmet, the giveaway that that's the man you're chasing. So we've slowly been reeling him in. There's been a bit of pointing and waving and banter across the barriers, but now he's got some defending to do as we close up on kart 11. And here we go, coming onto the big main straight. Could this be the chance? He has a look over the shoulder, a little touch of the barrier there, and that kills his speed. Kicks the back end round, and that gives us the chance to get up the inside. And we make sure it sticks. We sweep, keep to the inside, make sure he doesn't get a chance to launch and move back. And then you see the celebratory arm go up as we sweep round there. Now, unfortunately, Elliot did have to retire with his injury, but that did mean that we get an extra cam as we get some trackside footage of that pass on the chef. There you go, there goes the fist bump in celebration as we get round him. Lovely to see. We rejoin back on the kart again as we now have to go in pursuit of Ed and Glover, who are just a few corners ahead of us. Coming round and catching them up. I think they've just managed to get past Wasp there under blue flags, or they're getting past in there, look. So this is Wasp now that we're onto the back of in kart. It's kart 14. Yeah, so this is Wasp now that we're chasing down. We've then got Cave just ahead of him with Glover just ahead of him. So where can we make a move on Cave? This time there should be blue flags, and there aren't any, so any complaints that he had, we've more than made up for them there as he's held us up. But we see a sweep up the inside, and there you go, we're round nice and smooth. It's a solid pass, perhaps an eye-opener for a potential place to make a move that's not this main straight. So here we go, closing the gap up through the corners, look. As we come onto the back, chasing Ed down, he's closed his gap right back up on Glover, but can't quite make a move to get past him. Glover's obviously dropped right back. Davison and Horton are away in the race on this one. Move to the side a little bit, have a little look, think about it. There's not been a look back from Ed yet. We don't know if he knows that we're here. So we stick with him through this section. Can anyone get a good exit? We give a little tap on his rear bumper there, and that absolutely kills us. You see Ed have a look over his shoulder. He knows we're there now. Well, that's killed any chance of us being able to have a look. Going down the key overtaking opportunity at this circuit. Another little dink there. I think it's Glover that slowed right down. Ed's had to slam on him. Bit of a concertina and a little dink for him there. So apologies, Ed, if any of those were particularly uncomfortable. Another little think about a look. Nothing doing. It's too tight coming into there. You need to be alongside midway down the straight. But here you go. As he moves out to the outside, we use that we learned. Getting past Was just a couple of laps previously, that might have not been for position, but showed us that was an overtaking opportunity, and we've made the most of it, and now go on to chase down Glover. Look at this through the corners. We're gaining so much through the corners, and under braking here, look how much closer we get right onto the back of him, and we're coming up onto the back of Gary now as well, who will get the blue flags. So how will he have an impact? A little look to the outside to see if we can get Glover, but not this time. Come round under the bridge. Do we have a look? No, we're not quite. We've not got the run to be able to get in there. So we'll carry on chasing down. Now we can move back to Elliott Cam up in the gantry. It's a wonderful view. So you can see Gary coming round, the blue suit coming past us now. Then there's the gaggle of 3 cars. So Glover, orange helmet, Cade with the black helmet, myself in the blue suit in behind. As all 3 of us come piling round here. Ed moves to the outside, and there's the sweep up the inside. What a manoeuvre. You love to see stuff like that. What a replay that one is. It's beautiful. And then we get on after the glove man, chasing him down. Closing up through these braking areas. Get really close through here and follow him round. Waiting for any sniff of an opportunity. Will that opportunity come as part of the blue flags? Because we are closing in on Gary just ahead of us. Look, that's where we think about a move, and then we sweep back under this tunnel. Come round. G Miller still just ahead of us. Nothing doing, no chance to make that same dive on Glover as we saw from the onboard. So we jump back on board, and here you go. Gary's moved to the side, the blue flag's out. Can we make the switch? Oh, it's like watching Alex Albon as he tries to get past 2, but Glover holds the inside. And then watch this as he just runs us into the barrier. An arm raised, it's let G Miller back through. We just managed to hold Ed off, who was looking to sneak back through. G Miller moves to the side to allow us back through. Not happy with that performance from Glover. Very naughty. There was plenty of room for him to leave some space. But wouldn't you know it, we get the footage from the side of the track as well. So there's a move up the inside, look, and then we've got the outside. We're definitely still there. We're still there. Glover knows we're there, and he just runs us right into that barrier. Very, very unsportsmanlike from the glove man. We mentioned on the starting line, he'll do anything to get a bit of an advantage, and that looked a little bit naughty in my eyes. It certainly felt it from the onboard. He just absolutely shut the door on us when we were sat on the outside of him, and he absolutely knew we were there. So we jumped back on board again, chasing back after him. So the final hairpin of the lap, there's that bump that we were talking about on the way into the hairpin that cost us in the race, caused the issue with the kart. We managed to get alongside Glover, a bit of a better exit. He had a bit of a slide out that final corner, keep it tight to the inside, don't give him a chance to get back through. But he does manage to force his way alongside, but it tightens up too much through that next sector. And that's us got the overtake complete, and we can get on with the rest of the race. We've got plenty of clear track ahead of us now. Horton and Davison a fair way down the road. It'd be a monumental drive to get anywhere close to those boys. So now it's just about trying to salvage a bonus point by setting a fastest lap. So we go out and we just absolutely thrash the kart as much as we can. We can see Horton sort of coming out of the last sector as we're coming into it, but he's not going to be catchable in this one. So we'll just leave it as a sped up on board towards the end of the race as we chase times at this point. So we go back to regular speed, as here we go, we come across the line. That is a back marker coming. You can see Horton there, look, just coming round sort of the corners underneath. About 3-4 corners ahead of us. There's their boys, look, coming around, pulling into the pits now. So that was the gap to Horton. It was closing, but nowhere near fast enough. It was far too much of an ask. But that was what a race. I enjoyed this track so much. So yeah, I'd certainly recommend Wakefield Karting to anyone that fancies a tight race, sort of the Monaco of the local karting scene. And now we'll leave you with some audio as Glover gives us his excuses. So that was all she wrote for round 5 over at Wakefield Karting. So race result, it was Davison who obviously made the most at the start, and then Horton just couldn't reel him in. He was that little bit quicker on his fastest lap by 1/10.5, but it wasn't enough. He couldn't keep it consistent enough to be able to catch Davison and ultimately take the race win. So Davison takes the win here ahead of Horton. It was myself. I'm really happy with the recovery drive, to be honest, from way down at the back of the pack, almost lapped by Davison, as you saw on the footage as we came back out the pits in a fresh kart, and then we set the quickest lap time out there with a 39.7, so that's sort of 0.4 of a second quicker than Horton ahead of us. So we were really flying in kart number 5, I think it was, that we moved into. Whether that was just pure adrenaline on my part and determination to catch up, or if that was a particularly quick kart, possibly a bit of both. But I had a lot of fun and there were a lot of good overtakes. Bit of a shame about the early blue flag, as it had been an exciting battle as well. But it allowed us to catch up with the rest of the lads and have some good fights up there too. Glover obviously had his excuses, as his accelerator was stuck on until he put the brake pedal fully down. That caused it to spring back off again. How that'd work, I'm not entirely sure, but he's adamant that's his reason for not being as quick in race 2 as he was in the previous ones. Cave was nearly 0.4 of a second quicker than Glover, so Glover did seem to be nursing some kind of an issue, but Cave just could not make a move happen. Real shame for him, because there'd have been some good points to gain there if he'd have got that extra one and made that pass stick. Chef, he'll be happy, to be fair, in P6. It's where he wants to be, ahead of the likes of Gary and Jordan and Elliot. They're the guys that he's really competing with. Ed's sort of sitting in between the two, that sort of leading pack and the midfield at the minute, isn't he? He's bridging that gap. So that's where Chef wants to push towards, but he'll be happy with the P6 here. Dan McLaughlin, on the other hand, will not be happy. Bit of a frustrated figure he cut as we came out the karts and left the venue. As we said before, it just wasn't his sort of circuit. He comes with quite an aggressive approach into some corners, does Dan, and I think he'll admit that himself. And the hairpin after hairpin at a tight indoor circuit just doesn't suit his race style. And it's cost him here in the championship, because sort of P7, 14 points. He's dropping points on the leaders after coming in just 5 points off. Gary manages to get the better of Jordan this time out, so he gains that extra point, making that pass stick. sort of just after we got past them under the blue flags, I believe. And Elliott did manage a lap or so, but he was just in too much pain with that arm from the crash that he had in race 1, so had to retire from the race, unfortunately. The silver lining being that we got those couple of little highlights and a couple of overtakes and key moments from the gantry that he was stood on. A brilliant perspective, and great to get some of that extra footage in there, so thank you for that. So looking at how everyone fared across round 5, so this adds up the totals just from this round. So your quali points, your round 1 points, and your race 2 points. The purple ones where they've had the purple numbers are where they've had the bonus point for the fastest lap added on. So it's myself taking quali in race 2. Davison took the fastest lap in race 1, so they get the bonus points, and they're already added on there. So it's myself that comes out on top with a nice round 60 points from a triple header. Certainly can't complain at that. Davison next best, 20 points in race 1 and race 2. He'll be disappointed with his qualifying because he could have been right up there. He could have done even more damage if he'd have got his qualifying right. Just caught up too much, couldn't make it happen. So he comes out with 56, a couple of points ahead of Glover, who beats Horton, his big rival, by a single point, despite Horton getting P2 in the final race. So Glover holding on to that position over Cave was crucial in that little battle between them. Cave then comes out next. He got 49 points, 4 points clear of Chef, who himself was 5 points clear of McLaughlin. So McLaughlin's lost 20 points on the lead driver, just 5 points off coming into the race, we remind you. So he'll be really upset with that one and want to make that one up as soon as he possibly can. Elliott, despite having to retire from race 1 and race 2, still comes out just ahead of Was and Gary, thanks to his solid qualifying performance. And because he's put a lap in on both races, he can get points for them. He is classified in the race. Jordan, 35 points, a single point ahead of Gary, who you can see improves as the session went on. Maybe he wanted an extra race on the end. If there'd have been a race 3, could we have seen him a bit further up the table? Who knows? Just took a bit of time for him to get to grips with the track, it seemed. I think he did have to come into the pits at one point to change karts himself. I think that was in race 1, which is what cost him and dropped him that far back. So he'll be disappointed with that, because perhaps he could have done a bit better if that had not been the case. And then Steve unfortunately couldn't start race 2. He was feeling really ill, so that's a shame. But as he didn't complete a lap, can't classify him for points in race 2. So moving on to the final standings then, with round 5 all completed. So it's myself now back up to an 18-point lead at the top of the table, but now it's ahead of Davison. So we came out, he closed the gap up by a single point in that last race, having won it. I took the fastest lap, finishing P3. So McLaughlin's dropped 7 points off Davison, 25 off the lead now. So he's got some real ground to make up. Horton manages to get back past Glover again, so those two exchanging places throughout this round. It's Horton that comes out on top. He's P4, just a point ahead of Glover, who's just 2 points ahead of Cave. So really tight battle in the middle there. Rumours are as well that Horton has bottled round 6, can't make it, don't come, so it's a big chance for Glover and Cave to make some points up on him. It's set to be a triple header, so I think all the way down to sort of P10 could well jump Horton if he can't get his act together and make round 6. Could be in real trouble. So Chef ends in P7. He manages to jump Blake in the end after his retirement. He'll be really happy with that. Back up to P7 in the table. Leaves Wasp behind, who drops place because they were joint on points coming into this round. Elliott drops a place as Chef gets past him entirely. So just 1 point back to Elliott, and then there's 2 points back to Jordan. So again, that's a nice tight little pack in there. And all 3 of those drivers are set to attend round 6. Gary is another one that is going to be there for round 6 for the triple header at Parkwood. He's 21 points off that little pack ahead of him now. He does need to make some ground up. He's hoping for some dry weather at Parkwood, as that wet weather really seemed to cause him issues. He set the fastest lap in their final race there at Parkwood last time round, but it wasn't enough for him to salvage anything really from the race. He was already too far back. So he'll be hoping for some dry weather so he doesn't make such a mistake again, and to claw some points back and try and get back at the chef. Housley was obviously absent from this one, so he's lost out big time, finds himself now 39 points behind Gary ahead of him. Divine missing that last race meant that he couldn't close the gap on Craig. If he'd have even put a lap in, he'd have at least finished the race and he'd have gained 10 points and he'd have seen himself up to P11. We've then got that bottom section, 13th down to 17th, all also absent from this one. So we look ahead to Parkwood, which is set to take place in the middle of June. So that's another outdoor race. Really torrential rain just before we raced last time we were there, so some drivers hoping for dry conditions, some like how much it mixes it up a bit when it's wet. The grid draws and everything have already been done, so the lads that are taking part already know all that. So myself and Davison, McLaughlin are all definitely there. Horton can't make it. Glover is a maybe still. Cave, Chef, Elliot, Jordan, Gary, all definitely there. Divine's definitely there again. Paddy's there for this one as well, so can he gain some places from down in P14? Housley's a maybe due to injury. Jackson can't make it, and then Alex, Kurt and Louis down at the bottom, all absent as well. So thank you very much for watching, guys, and we will catch you at the next one.